Peace, everyone. It's Black High Priestess. So I thought I would check in with you all. I had a pretty good question tonight. Someone asked a question that I guess it kind of emerged from the conversation we were having. And the question was, what is Vodun? I wanted to answer that question, and I kind of wanted to talk about the importance of maintaining mysteries as priests and priestesses. Vodun is it's a blanket term that can be translated from language and dialect to language and dialect. You got Vodun, you got voodoo. There's more different spellings than phonetics to it. But Vodun encompasses the different spiritual traditions and customs across the diaspora that originate with African spirituality. Vodun is a system of African spirituality centered on ancestral reverence, and that incorporates spiritual mysteries, bloodline traits, and ritual customs. If anyone has any more questions that concern the details of Vodun, I'm open to that, but I really was inspired to go live about that question because I wanted to talk about the importance of maintaining Vodun as a spiritual system of ancestral mysteries. Something that I learned as Black High Priestess over the years, I learned the significance of some of the things that I began teaching. I learned the significance of maintaining mysteries of Vodun, particularly mysteries of sacred femininity and of the craft involved in Vodun. The craft, meaning the magic, the witchcraft, the supernatural rites that can be accessed and should be practiced by those who hold the responsibility of those practices. Vodun is a lifestyle, it's a responsibility, and most importantly, Vodun is a bloodline trait. That's why it deals with the ancestral reverence of the African diaspora. Having said that, I learned through helping others voluntarily how important it is to preserve the mysteries, because initiates, some of us can have an eagerness to share what we know. My eagerness to share as Black High Priestess came from using spirituality in a revolutionary way, using spirituality for spiritual warfare and Black revolution. My desire to share those mysteries came from understanding how Vodun has in the past freed Black people from slavery and how it has the potential to liberate Black people from spiritual slavery and in practical ways, economic ways. In so many ways. And over the years, the more I help people, the more respect I earned for what I was doing. And I can't say that. What I can say is the more respect I earned for myself and my role as Black High Priestess. I came out really teaching Vodun as a bloodline trait significant to African people, and that really requires certain rites of passage, certain understanding, but most importantly, requires a certain intention to really be initiated into the clean spirits and the clean ancestors. When I say clean, I'm talking about the fact that a lot of unclean demonic spirits will disguise themselves in the context of Vodun and in the context of being an ancestor, and they can latch onto you and take away your unique purpose as an individual and take away the foundation of Vodun, and they can really, these unclean spirits that disguise themselves as Vodun ancestors, they can really create a lot of confusion, a lot of competition, and a lot of unnecessary drama in a person's life. And what I really want to share with people with this upload is to remind people that Vodun is not a toy. African spirituality is not a toy. It's not a game. It's not for entertainment, and it's not something that initiates who have earned a responsibility of a priest or a priestess. Mambo, Baba Lao, Hunsi, Baba, there's a few different titles for people who have a responsibility to preserve the mysteries. And there's too much teaching and sharing the mysteries, myself included. What I'm trying to say is there are too many people, especially women, dabbling into spirituality and mysticism that will not benefit them. There's too many sisters who are curious about spirituality and mysticism because people are teaching and sharing things that make it look glamorous, that make it look normal, that make it look accessible to any and everyone who is curious. Peace, Kizzy. Just let me get to your question in just a second. Let me finish this thought. It's important to understand that this rise in curiosity, particularly among women, about Vodun and African spirituality it's not just a trend, and it is a trend. People who are curious do not have bloodline traits. People who have bloodline traits are going to be actively practicing. Let me just give this metaphor. If you're born as a human being, something you're born with, or so to speak, a bloodline trait of your biology as a human is that you need water, you need food. Naturally, as a human being, you are going to drink water and eat food on a regular basis to survive. When you have the bloodline trait of Vodun, or a bloodline trait of spirituality and mysticism from any diaspora, you will be actively practicing your bloodline trait, your spirituality, and your ancestral reverence the same way that a human being eats and drinks to survive. You do not become curious, you do not become involved, and you do not become initiated because it's a trend. It is something that you were born with. The way a human is born with the biological need to drink water and eat food on a daily basis. That's what it means to be a bloodline trait. And you know, I just want to reiterate, the rise in interest in mysticism and spirituality is not just a trend. It's not just because Black Revolution has widely marketed it. It is spiritual. And there are unclean spirits that seek to latch on to women who don't know their ass from a hole in the ground when it comes to spirituality and mysticism, and they seek to infect women with the Jezebel spirit. Having said that, Vodun is biblical. The Levites hold the mysteries of Vodun, the most original mysteries of Vodun. It still originates with the Dogon. But remember, that is concerning the traditions, and the mysticism of Vodun originates with the Dogons, traced back to ancient Kemet, where the Dogons migrated to from a more central part of Africa. Okay. The biblical mysteries of Vodun were held with the Levites. And the Bible, you know, assuming its starting position being with the first humans on Earth, can easily be related to the mysteries of the Dogons being the ambassadors of Vodun, so to speak. All right, Kizzy. Peace, Kizzy. How do you discern if a ancestor? How do you blah 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 blah? How do you discern if it's an ancestor or spirit guide helping you versus an unclean spirit if you are getting what you ask for as requests? Well, that's also an excellent question. Kizzy, it's important to understand that first, just because a spirit is an ancestral spirit, it does not mean that they have your best interest at heart. It's important to understand that even within Vodun, just like nowadays, just like with anything, some of your family members may support you, may help you, may love you. Some of them may not. Same thing with ancestral reverence. If you are asking for something that's going to benefit you, that's in the realm of black magic. And I use these terms loosely. Okay. This is just to answer your question. When you're petitioning something to benefit you, that's considered black magic. When you're petitioning something to benefit somebody else, that's considered white magic. In the Iyamin, you have black, white, and red. So there's that red witchcraft, so to speak, which I don't want to get too much into, but I'll say that the red craft, the red witchcraft, so to speak, more so deals with the blood, the bloodline trait. That means you don't have to always ask and petition, but you have that level of age, or that level of you have that bloodline trait that allows things to happen in your favor, or that naturally protects you without you having to be a practitioner or petition. So to answer your question, it really depends on your intention and who you asked. If you asked a specific ancestor and you called them by your name, and this is a dead relative that you knew when you were living, and they passed, and you now call on them as a dead relative, you call on them as an ancestor that may serve as a spirit guide, and you're receiving what you want, that's something that can be attributed to the Most High reaching you, so to speak, through your bloodline ancestors, through ancestral reverence. If you're calling on an ancestor that you didn't know, an ancestor that is strictly spiritual, not a dead relative, but an ancestor that you know by name that's spiritual, and you're initiated into the house or the mysteries of this ancestor, that's where it can get tricky, because these spirits, they often give you what you want in order to keep you coming back. And here, here's the thing with me as Black High Priestess. I try and do questions live. So when, like I said, when people don't pay for a reading or make a donation and people have questions, I like to do it live. but I always am picking up on energies, individual energies from the Inquisitor. Here's what I'll say. Because that's a tricky question. But if you are getting what you want, but you don't have what you need, you're dealing with an unclean spirit. The Most High uses mysterious forces and mysterious ways. The Most High works in mysterious ways. Those mysterious ways can be our ancestral spirit guides. They can be actual angels within the choirs of the angels. They can even be experiences. Excuse me. Those mysterious ways can even be experiences that challenge us, that give us rites of passage through overcoming these challenges, that test us in ways where we can then testify or give a testament to the effectiveness of our craft or our faith. Unclean spirits unclean spirits will consume your life in subtle ways, and they want to remain undetected. So, I hope that answers your question, Kizzy, but I want to kind of double back to what I intended to talk about in this upload, which is the fact that, especially for women, these unclean spirits can have you wanting notoriety for being a mystic or being an initiate. Unclean spirits can have you wanting attention and wanting even income, even wanting money, wanting clients. Unclean spirits, particularly with women, can take an initiate and make them want to go teach and initiate other women that don't deserve the mysteries. An unclean spirit can make you eager to let other people know mysteries that they haven't earned. Unclean spirits can make you eager to give tarot divination or to give readings. And I say that because an unclean spirit, their mission and their intention is to find more hosts for these legions of demons. And the way an unclean spirit can find a host is to get somebody who can host clean spirits, meaning a priest or priestess, to get somebody who has a bloodline trait to share these mysteries with people who don't have bloodline traits. And that is why it's imperative that those of us who do have bloodline traits and who do have mysteries and who have been actively practicing all of our life, not through initiation, through birth, through blood, unclean spirits can encourage you in subtle ways and make you think that you're doing a service to others, make you think that you're elevating women by teaching these spiritual mysteries that are not to be taught to women. Because a witch is different than a mere woman if she has the bloodline trait of witchcraft. I'm glad that answered your question, Kizzy. Peace, crack. Ancestral reverence is just that. Ancestral reverence is revering, acknowledging your ancestral bloodline traits, your ancestors that have passed, and the heritage that you come from that lies in that blood, that lies in that lineage. Ancestral reverence is often confused with ancestral worship. And when you go from revering your ancestral lineage and the heritage that gives you bloodline traits of Vodun to worshiping ancestors as deities and to idolatry, which means you now have statues and trinkets and objects that are in the shape of an ancestor that you have at your altar. Now you're bowing down and worshiping an idol. Okay. And that's kind of where you should draw the line. Do I think it's wrong to share the mysteries with Caucasian people? Absolutely. Vodun mysteries are for the bloodline heritage of the African diaspora. Sharing them with anybody is a no-no. And like I said, myself included, that's why I really was encouraged to go live in response to the question, what is Vodun? First and foremost, it's a bloodline trait that belongs to the African diaspora. And when I say the diaspora, I'm talking about the fact that Africans were the first to travel and therefore leave traces of our rich heritage all over the planet. Slavery enriched the Americas with African spirituality that is now practiced by Americans, North and South Americans that are slave descendants. But again, you know, the Santeria, the Lukumi, the Palo Mayombe, the Yoruba, all of these things are now being appropriated for white people to practice. And that appropriation of African spirituality, including the biblical testament, including the covenant, because that's what Vodun is. It's that covenant that the Most High established with the Hebrew Israelites. Vodun is that bloodline covenant of the African diaspora. So when you take a bloodline trait and covenant and system of mysteries and ancestors and appropriate it for Caucasians who have a different lineage and a different pantheon, namely Mount Olympus, okay? When you appropriate the African diasporic pantheon of ancestors for people who are recessive from those traits and those ancestors, or people who are not related to those ancestors, that's when you get the infiltration of unclean spirits that are manipulating the ways Vodun is practiced and taught and understood. There's a lot of white women who have Vodun shops here, and they are very secretive about advice. It baffles me, like they don't want me to know anything. Well, here's the thing. I'm getting that them not wanting you to know anything has, in your particular circumstance, has less to do with them being white and has more to do with the fact that I'm getting that these women that you're talking about actually have mysteries that they know through earning the mysteries are not to be shared with people who don't have them. However, it's important to understand while we're on the subject of race and this being a bloodline trait, because again, that's why I said it's I do encourage people to get a reading. Go ahead and make a donation and pay for a private reading, because I'm Black High Priestess. I'm not for entertainment purposes. I pick up on things constantly. There are some empaths and psychics and diviners who like to note the fact that they're not always divining and reading people. That's not the case with me. Black High Priestess is always reading people, and that's not by choice, but it is by my right. So I am one of those people who I'm always reading people. I'm always picking up on things. So for you, Kizzy, I do pick up that these women do have real mysteries, but understand that white people, Caucasians have recessive genetics, and the recessive genetic inclination of the Caucasian is to preserve their recessive race. And the Caucasian has that recessive inclination that the genetically dominant African does not have. Genetically dominant people do not have the inclination to preserve our race, because we are not recessive genetic, and you cannot breed out our race. You cannot eliminate our genetic. If the black dominant genetic and lineage is eliminated, all of humanity is eliminated, which is the goal of the unclean spirits, to terraform the planet and the resources. The first resource being the woman and the man, meaning the first resource being humans. These unclean spirits want to create a vampiric environment that's conducive to vampires, which has a lot to do with taking away the sun that feeds the genetically dominant human, taking away the resources and giving, and in return giving a simulated sun, giving a fake sun, giving fake food, creating situations of cannibalism and all of these other things that come from lack of vitamin D and lack of human genetics. My point is, white, Caucasian, recessive genetic people, in their inclination to preserve that recessive genetic that can easily be bred out and that can easily be eliminated on this planet, because it's recessive. Their inclination may be why they don't want to teach a black woman the mysteries that belong to her lineage. So, again, there are people who are white who have respect for spirituality. There are people who are white who have enough African ancestry, but more importantly, they may not have the phenotype, but their heart is in the right. Sorry. They may not have the phenotype, but their heart is in the right place, so much so that the Holy Spirit can endow them with mysteries because they will use them to help others in the ways that support the Holy Spirit of the Most High, in the ways that benefit the ancestral lineage that chooses to mount and help a white person who is outside of the bloodline. Sorry. So, again, white people practicing Vodun, teaching it and having shops and everything, that is a long-term agenda that has come to fruition in now in this day in modern times. That has been a long-term agenda because white people, white colonizers knew and understood our power as Black African people lies in our spirituality. That is a mystery that's not understood by people outside of the bloodline trait. White people, white colonizers understood that not all Black people have these bloodline traits, but those of us who do have the most potential to liberate our people from the oppression of white colonization. And that's exactly what it did during slavery. So that's again why I'm talking about how important it is for us to stop sharing these mysteries and really preserve them for people who come correct. Something I want to do and I've been called to do is to write a book, to write, books, and to really close off, some of my services and that's why I go live to answer questions that people have. But I'm doing more products and focusing more on literature and just answering the questions, because it's, like I said, the influx of women showing interest and of women teaching is spiritual and not in a good way. We're giving away our mysteries and our power and to women who don't have them and who don't understand them, but are going to teach them in a way that benefits the new world order and in a way that ultimately will benefit the recessive genetic. That is why it's more important to preserve the mysteries than to teach them. Unclean spirits will influence people to share mysteries that should not be shared unless someone really earns them or makes a proper offering. So remember, white people have a recessive genetic inclination that can be unconscious or subconscious, but more often than not, it is very conscious, very deliberate in a white person's need to oppress Black people. But this is beyond race. What I'm saying is Black or white. There are too many women hosting a Jezebel spirit, hosting an unclean spirit that can want them to lead women, but will cause them to lead women astray. Yeah, baby, hold on. Just be mindful. Those of you who are in the business or the activism of helping other people with spirituality, let people come to you and really use your spiritual discernment to determine whether or not this person has the right to learn from you. I don't want to discourage anyone from being an entrepreneur or making money or starting a business and being financially independent by offering products and services. But when you're dealing with spirituality, it's not for sale. Has to be sacred economic transactions. And your first responsibility as an advanced, high practicing mystic, whatever title you may have, your first responsibility is to preserve the mysteries, not to teach them, to preserve them so they can be used. Yes, Kizzy, there's a lot of surface level information. But there's, that's because there's a demand for it. That's because it's become trendy. When I came out as Black High Priestess, my intention was to kind of take the trendiness out of it and to reestablish the mysteries of it and the respect for it, the sacredness of it. And what I realized is that I made it trendy because as a model, I attracted people. As a model, you make things look good. And when you're a model, anything that you put on, you can make look good and you make it sell. And I forgot, as a model, I represent Black women. And I represent Black women in a way that Black women would like to be represented in mass media, in art, you know. And I didn't realize how low the vibration really was in my community, in my environment, in my city. And there's some great things happening here, and there's some powerful individuals. But my intention was to bring Vodun to Black revolution. What I had to realize was the Black revolution already happened when our ancestors successfully used Vodun to free themselves and formulate Haiti, and to give us as modern Black Americans the rights and the freedoms that we now enjoy. The Black Revolution already happened. What I also had to realize is that the more advanced you get, the less you can go around teaching and divining and promoting. The more responsibility you have to not share what you know. And that's hard when you are a loving, generous person who wants to help, and who wants to help other Black women especially. Ladies, remember, we are different than men. And the differences that the Most High created in men and women are recognized by demonic, evil, unclean forces. The woman is the weaker vessel. That's the design. That is why certain spirits latch onto women easier and intentionally, because a woman is very susceptible to things that a man is not necessarily susceptible to when men and women are in our natural states. I didn't want to make this upload too long, but okay. I keep hearing that feminine energy has returned to Earth. Can you explain what this means spiritually? Well, without being conceited, but genuinely answering your question, I was born in 1985. I have a high ancestral spirit. When I was born, I brought with me back to earth a lot of feminine energy that was lost in Black women. Black women being genetically dominant and having originally set the standard, but being oppressed in America. The oppression of Black women affects everyone's femininity. Okay? So to say that feminine energy has returned to earth, well, I could say, yeah, in 1985, I was born. Other priestesses can make the same claim that they came back. But the reality, the spiritual mystery, the spiritual reality is the reason women attract unclean spirits and are targeted by demonic forces is because women empowering themselves with mysteries that belong to witches who earned these mysteries through marriage with fallen angels, through mating with fallen angels. Okay. Women, mere women, utilizing mysteries from fallen angels, utilizing bloodline traits of witches who were born with certain rights and traits. Women using those things creates an imbalance in humanity. A woman's biology and a man's biology is different and is directly related to the continuation of the species and the best circumstances and scenarios. But science even concludes itself that even in the animal kingdom, monogamy is the best circumstance for survival within the animal kingdom. Okay, so you can see what I'm getting at. Unclean spirits target women because a woman embodying powers creates an imbalance in our society where masculinity and femininity have gender roles based on biology, not sexism, based on biology. And how a woman's biology changes so she can nurture the next generation. How a man's biology endows him with necessary instincts that allow a nation to prosper. Okay. This feminine energy has always been on earth, has always been oppressed, has always been utilized. This feminine energy that you're talking about, that when you're hearing that feminine energy has returned to earth, that is to say that women are now using witchcraft Okay. Women. Now, I'm not saying witches are using witchcraft. I'm saying women are now using mysteries of witchcraft, mysteries of the occult, mysteries of Vodun to empower themselves. That's not balance. Women empowering themselves creates imbalance. The same way men empowering themselves creates imbalance. African culture and African spirituality are congruent. The doctrines within Vodun African spirituality support the African culture that, elevates women to an equal position in a way that Western European culture does not. Yet African culture is still about the preservation of the species and the prosperity and the unity and the community, the common unity that us as genetically dominant individuals and genetically dominant races have, that inclination for community and unity and sustaining ourselves through helping each other. We have that inclination to share our rich resources. Now, again, certain nations understand, African Black nations, there are certain African Black nations that understand the importance of keeping your resources, but that comes through patriarchy. That comes through men leading and ruling and letting the masculine inclinations lead, so masculine inclinations can protect and provide, and the feminine inclinations or the feminine principles, we're talking about masculine and feminine principles, can nurture and sustain. These gender roles are biological. They're not social stigmas or constrictions. They are biological roles that we're created with. And women are being empowered by the Jezebel spirit that has created or that has propagated feminism as a New World Order agenda that takes away the natural power that a man was created with by the Most High to lead and to rule, to protect and provide and be responsible. And what feminism does is it castrates men and it puts everyone on an equal level, but actually then it elevates a woman who is not biologically designed to take on the leadership roles that feminism teaches women that they deserve and that they belong in. Spirituality and mysticism causes unclean demonic spirits to latch on to women who should be learning sacred femininity through understanding the importance of being humble to a man, not a sexist, not a racist, not an abuser, not a rapist and a child molester or a boy, but a man who is a warrior man who has earned his manhood through rites of passage in the community. Sacred femininity starts with knowing your place. See, this went way too long. They're about to cut me off. So I will return to talk more about this subject, but just let me know if you have any questions. All right, everyone. Peace and love.